And there we are. Okay, so last week we went over objects and arrays and how to loop over the values in them. So this is kind of a lot of code. And today we're going to learn how we can create some reusable blocks of code called functions that we can just call instead of having to write this same boilerplate code and copy paste everywhere. Some reasons why that's helpful is because you can use functions to write similar code. So for instance, you'll see how I've got several different person objects that have the same properties. So what we can do with functions is we can create what's called a constructor function to return an object that we can use later. So let's start with the basics of a function. To use a function, you have to first declare it, and then you call it. To do that, you type function, and then you give it a name, my first function, and then you do an open parentheses, and then you open curly brackets. So inside of this block, you can declare some code. So everything we've been writing right now, if I just move it into this function, when we run our application, nothing will happen initially. So I'm going to move all of the code here. I'm going to format this document. And it'll look pretty now. Okay, so now all of the code I just wrote is in my first function now. So what do you think will happen when I open up this document? Go ahead and open it up. It's opened on my other screen, so I have to go to it. Then I'll double click, and then I'll pull it up here. So you remember in our last class, I was looking at the console for console messages. And you'll notice there's nothing there anymore since I moved the code into the function block. The reason why that is because inside of this function, all the code could run, but it can't run unless you call the function. So think of this like a soldier who's ready to receive orders. So this is like a guy on a radio waiting for his orders. He won't do anything until you give him his orders. So what you do is you type my first function and then open close parentheses. So what that does is that says, all right, Mr. Function, run the code inside of you. Okay, so if I go ahead and hit reload on this one now, you'll see all the stuff from the last class will get called. So once again, all you have to do to create a function and then call it. Let me do a simpler example. Comment these out. Function main console.log hello from main. And then I'll call main here. And now if I reload this page, it says hello from main. So what I want you to do now is create a function and then call it in your test code. It can do whatever you want it to do. You can do what I did in the first run and just move all the code from last week's example into a function, or you can just create a simple main example like I did here. I'll come back in about 5 minutes, check everybody's progress. Time to eat my donut. Questions, concerns? Yeah. Yes. Oh, I see. I need to start following. Credit not true. That's true. That's table there. We, I'm. Like trying to find the make them.
Yeah.
T-shirt. Yeah, but we were. Right. You everybody was acting like he was there. It's yeah. We agree with structure. Very this is like all the people are up in the room. Yeah, I guess.
Hello, Amanda.
Good morning.
Today we're looking at functions. So what we did just now is we created a function and we're calling the function. So that's where we're at right now. Which is suitable for this class, but also like if you use Git, you can save your stuff and see the changes and how your program quote unquote grows over time. So,
But I mean, if it is your goal, like job issues, then is it your goal to get? Yeah, I have no idea.
I kind of miss my clients later, but I can't figure out like console with my or
so
You can install Node.js, run from console, or run from this part right here. So it's, yeah, so if you search for Node.js on the web, Node.js, to get it on your computer, yes. The way you're doing it before probably do. So if you right click that and you review and find it. And that'll look like it. That's gonna put that in back there.
Thanks, good.
You don't do that. And then we get F12 function.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's saying file is not found. So I looked in your terminal, if you go back to Visual Studio. Reveal and finder on that one as well. So right click that and rename it to .js, or July 9th .js. If that's what's missing. Yeah. And then go back to your browser. First. Sure. That's how you were doing it. you hit command, keep that window open, and you hit command bar refresh. Okay, so now you're not getting cloud on there. So what you can do now is just type console.log in your JS file, and then it'll start spitting out to that console. So console.log, you pass it to as well, right? So if you do console.log me, it'll show that me object created in July 9. I think it's July 9 JS. So basically, the HTML file doesn't do anything, it just loads your JavaScript. So everything you're going to be doing is editing JavaScript file.
Okay, so this is one way you can reuse code. So you can call main as many times as you want. So you can just call hello from main as many times as you need to, right? So if I save this and reload, we'll call it however many times I put it. 11 times, right? And Chrome and Firefox are very good about grouping together things that are the same. The other thing you can do with the function is you can put it in a loop. So if you remember from last time, we did loops. So for let I less than 11, I plus plus, we can call main 11 times inside of this function block as well. What is it? Shift Alt F. Yay. So if I reload, it'll also log 11 times, or it should. What am I doing wrong? Maybe this has to.
I have to start something.
Oh, right. Let I equal 0.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you, Dustin. Wait, so what does undefined plus plus equal? Man.
It's not good.
Okay, rabbit trail, but that's okay. So basically functions are great because you can sort of control the flow of your program a lot better. For instance, if we wanted to execute only a part of this function, we could say console.log hello from main, and we can say console.log this shouldn't happen. So we don't want that console log statement to happen. So what we can do, we can return if something is true. So let's say if we're a good example of this is debug mode, right? So say you want to figure out what's wrong with your program. So you can say if debug mode, not that, goodness. If we're not in debug mode, then we'll go ahead and return. But if we're in debug mode, we want to continue to the end of the function. So this return keyword basically says, okay, all done. We're going to exit the function now. So let's set debug mode to true. Whoops. So we'll set const debug mode equals true. So because debug mode is on, we'll go to the end of the function. So it says this shouldn't happen, hello from main 11 times because we're in this loop. I put this down to 1. But if we set this to false, you'll just see hello from main. The other good thing about functions is you can pass in data from the outside to the inside of the function. So say, for instance, we wanted to say how many times we had logged to the console or whatever, or called main, basically. To do that, you can put parameters up in here. So you can say index, and then you can reference this variable or this parameter or argument. If you hear the words parameter or argument, they're synonymous with what's going on here. So this index parameter can be referenced inside the function. So I can say console.log main has been called I plus 1 times. And the reason why we're doing I plus 1 is because this is a zero-based loop. So what we pass in will always be 1 behind. So let's go ahead and run this, and I'll show you what it looks like. To put in your data from outside, you pass in your variable here. So main I, right? So main, open parentheses. You can pass arguments or parameters to the functions, and then it'll come inside here, and you can reference it here. This should be index, not I. Sorry. Okay. So now, if we run this, you'll see main has been called 1 times. I guess I should do this just in case, and that way it looks a little appropriate. Okay, so that's a way you can get data from outside of your function to the inside of your function. And this, this variable doesn't have to be a number. It can be an object. We can say, you know, like index I, some other property equals crawler. And then when we run this, it'll log out the object. So it'll say main has been called object 1 times. So when you pass in this object, it doesn't know how to evaluate this. And what it does is it just says, this is the string representation of an object. Right, so if I call index 1 dot to string, it'll just say, oh wait, I have to evaluate it first. It'll say object. And I had to put parentheses around it so JavaScript knew that wasn't object literal. I basically just wanted to do something in place to demonstrate. You would also do it like this. You would say some object equals index 1. And then you would do some object dot to string, and you'll get object when you call it. Okay. So now what I want you to do is modify your main function to take 1 argument of index and then loop over the function 10 times and log out how many times the function has been called. Are there any questions about arguments and parameters? Okay.
Is there a shorthand for that for loop, for that type of for loop? like 4 in for each, but like 4 in a range.
I think so. Let me see. Yes, there is. It's a little scary looking.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
we
like-
don't need to look at it.
Okay, here's what it looks like, Dustin. It looks like 0.
Oh, that's,
Dot
no, why would you do it that? Why would they make it like that?
10. Maybe dot 10. And then it's dot for each.
No, that's fine. I'm good.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm good. I got it. I've seen some that was like 4 I in range 20, and then it will do it. You don't have to write it that way. But I've not seen it in JavaScript, just other languages, so I didn't know.
Yeah, so it's like this, right? I've got it now. Array 10.
Oh, okay. No, that's not easier. That's just that's bad easier.
No, it is not.
No. That's also not shorter. It's not a shorthand. It's
No,
longhand.
it's not.
I'm just writing geometry.
S is not defined. What?
Oh.
Yeah, so not easier, but you could. So this is a. I'll use this later on in an example.
So this is.
Form. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, it's writing which could do.
I'm sure putting that sometimes is too.
I think it's still going to be like you have to fill an array first, and then you can call the for each on it.
Probably.
Okay, so getting back to arguments, I know y'all have some questions, so.
Just a little lost like the last one.
Okay.
The name was to it.
You had it all right, but the only thing you have to do is say the number I, put it in parentheses. So if you say that, run it, it should let you know. Yes, so it is on YouTube because it's on YouTube. So that was just to show you that you can also encourage your excuse.
This number here is from one. Landline.
Yes, that's the derivation. So basically, you're going to go from 0 to 11.
That's one thing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I can change that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the same. This is not
true. Slash inactive.
which would be true, would be not false. Oh, you're talking about a multi-line comment?
Yeah, I'm not actually.
Yeah. Okay, so multi-line, you want to comment?
It's just, it's very. Yeah, so we can show up.
Yeah, and that one. Start there. Yeah, there, now it's all commented out.
I tried to do a thing, so I know, but for, outside what I can.
That's very good. That's a good practice. To like separate what you do.
I want to go clean out you, but it was angry. And I just go to that. Please.
Okay, so this hashtag calling.
Yeah. I didn't know because like, like. Like honestly. It's like.
I think it'll be also, so it still says, this color, so you shift all of that.
Yeah, I wanted to that.
And
I can find this.
Yeah.
This is more. Was there a like, what's.
Okay, so that one here, we're going to see that, and close that one. Is this one good?
And also-
And then if you want to format it, and shift all that, you'll see your code will format it.
I have one.
Shift all of that view. Should you can also write it like
Like,
on a file.
and
Yeah. Okay, so. Follow okay, so on my 15.
so more clever.
Exactly. Books. When it's like everything has to be in books, so it's. Oh, the capital I, yeah. Actually, that's. And then it's a color colon. So now, yeah, now you should all be that's in code. This whole thing. Commercial. They have no filling. So in your file, it looks like that needs a capital C there. So you'll need some sort of area here, code first, and store string or colon, whatever color someone uses. And then that's the. Are you gonna? Well, you can do this. I should know that. I always very, so I didn't know the value that probably want. Would get online. So you have to enter. No, you're good. Action. So right here, I'm saying some. That should.
Like advanced. I was going to say like online, and then sit do here.
There's automatic formatting you can do.
Then do like whatever.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, for that. You can do that. That'll be easy. No, that is fine. Scroll to the right. Good, scroll to the left. You see to remove the space between made and. What does it say if you hover over the text? Parser, it's fine. That's exactly what's there. Oh my. You do, so what I find helps is if I break out brackets on some big lines. Yeah. Well, actually, and a half here. So when I say we want, I guess if you just plot it. And that's mostly, that's how JavaScript sees things. If it sees a curly bracket on one line, it goes to go to the next line or whatever. And then on line 14, there's another one at the end of this shouldn't happen. Still. It should be in statement. That is, you both know in your function. And have a toothpaste between. Statements. Trees. I don't expect it to end, but I'm just keeping something for the few now.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was school.
You want that for your farm online.
Ah, I see. So online,
You should have a really variable form. And that gets stored.
That's insurance on
And so you're asking in with the number that you're on, which you call it.
it. How do you say? Curly bracket. So close curly bracket. Curly bracket. You can see there's the red line there. I think there's- Yes, okay, so now you say that should
Up to 11
times.
So all the way up where it gets to that. So now you go to where you're doing the all of the not showing up how many times you can call because we did the tactics. It's actually this key that you do this very cool regulation where you're like passing in a variable with the dollar. So you have that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see.
This is
It's
different than that.
slightly slanted.
On mine, the first one, where I added that for me.
Yeah, it would be on that. Exactly. Single. Right, one, so you add that
After the
thing
dollar
there.
change.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, always use the back.
You can close it
And then
down.
you don't accidentally get into that.
Yeah, because when I think it actually asked me
It's fine with it. I would always, if it's gonna be something where you have to remember, I would always use the backticks because they're going to be more personal.
I think I'll probably do something one that we wouldn't at least that's exactly what the problem is.
Yeah, they'll tell you exactly what went wrong. It's just figuring out what that means is definitely a lot harder at first. But once you get some time on it, it's like super, I won't say easy, but it becomes less skill. Yeah, I won't say it's easy. Sometimes you'll be missing a semicolon and there'll be errors that are totally unrelated to the missing semicolon that you still have to fix.
Or ones that you don't have to fix, you just put this semicolon in and all the other errors will go away.
All right, so we're doing pretty good so far in the room. How's everybody doing online? My boss can do this cricket noise with a whistle. Like he can whistle a cricket noise. I want to learn how to do that.
Like just with this mouth.
Yep. All right, Sherika says good, so we're gonna move on. Amanda, you okay? All right, so we're gonna do a stretch goal in this function. You notice how debug mode is a constant on line 59? What I want you to do is extract this variable out to an argument. You can add more than one argument in JavaScript by adding a parentheses and then typing the name of the second argument. And then a cool thing about JavaScript is it doesn't care if you pass in the correct number of arguments. So it'll just leave whatever you didn't pass in undefined. So right now, when my code goes in on line 68 and calls main, debug mode is undefined. And undefined by default is false. So if you try and figure out what kind of a variable, or like if it's true or false, and there's a concept in JavaScript that I haven't really talked about called truthy and falsy. There are, so like an object, right? So we have objects up here, right? So if I were to ask, let's try this, if me do this. So what happens when this code runs? Let me uncomment this. Any ideas? You remember an if statement determines whether some code runs or not. So I'm passing in a check to see if me is true. But it's not a Boolean, it's not true or false. So how does JavaScript know what to do in this situation? There's a concept called truthy and falsy. And falsy values, there's a list of them, but they're like empty arrays can be falsy or they can be truthy. Empty strings are falsy values, I think. Let me find a cheat sheet.
Undefined is falsy. 0 is falsy.
Nan is falsy.
An empty array could be true.
Depends on if you do type coercion or not.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the MDN web docs, and it says in JavaScript, a truthy value that is a value that is considered true when encountered in a Boolean context. So when you try and see if something is true or false, a value can be truthy to tell JavaScript go ahead, or falsy to tell JavaScript no, Chris won't. So all values are truthy unless they are defined as falsy. So here's the list of canonical falsy values. Yeah, we'll get to this later. Don't worry about this one. So the me object is none of these values. So what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and say it's a me in the console. But if you pass undefined, right? So if I, say if undefined, or better yet, let me just say const me. What's going to happen now? Let me see if I have syntactically correct JavaScript. I do, so let me go back to that. Okay, let me reload. So it's a me was called, right? The do this function was called because the object, when it's evaluated as a Boolean, looks like it's true. But if I change it to undefined, or even if I do just comment it out, that means that variable is not defined, which may mean it will crash. I'm not sure. Yeah. So it'll crash if it's not defined. It's a me was not called. Back here? Oh no, I'm not zoomed in as far as I can go. It's getting bigger. All right, so what I want to do with the stretch goal is we have this main function. I want you to add a debug mode flag or argument or parameter so that if nothing is passed to it, it's going to return early. Otherwise, it'll print out some debug information. Wait, what? Who? Where? I'm looking at the FizzBuzz Wikipedia. Apparently, it originated as a word game. It wasn't a programming problem first. I didn't know that. It makes sense, but
I knew that, but I don't know anything about it. Clearly, they just told us and.
right, yeah. I threw a on line 73 on this document that this right here, the arguments, is a special keyword inside of a function. Yeah, it'll actually print out everything that was passed into the function. Because JavaScript doesn't care about the number of parameters you send to a function, you have to, there's an object to keep track of everything that was passed in. So I can actually add more things on line 79 if I want to.
Will they still come in, even though you didn't give it
Mhm.
parameter?
What do you mean?
So you didn't give it a parameter of there.
Yes.
Fine, but you're passing an argument.
Yes. It'll still come into the function. And you can access it via the arguments object. You want to see it?
Yeah, no, I believe you. It sounds bad.
JavaScript is a pretty easy language to abuse once you learn it. There's a reason why most website vulnerabilities and hacks are executed via JavaScript. How's everybody doing? You're doing okay. Oh, thanks, Carolyn. Are you reading your book?
I was reading my book. It's something inside arguments.
You are putting something inside arguments. Arguments is a keyword. You see how it's in orange?
Yeah.
So the arguments keyword inside of a function will let you access everything that's been passed into the function from the outside caller. This is the outside caller. So if I run this code, we're gonna see 2 times it'll log out it's broken. Or, well, let's see. Let me go ahead and run the code. Yes. Yes. Well, okay. So what you can do is instead of logging, here's some info like this. If you just do console log arguments, it'll look different. So let me go ahead and take this part out. And then we'll put this on a new line. Console.log arguments. Like so. Save that. If you look, arguments is an object. So this is the 9th time we called it. The debug flag was true at this moment. And I also passed in an extra it's broken argument. So basically this is an array. See how it's an array 0, 1, 2 of everything that was passed in. So you can do custom logic if you want to like create a function that takes more than a couple parameters. You can just access the arguments object and check to see what value is in it. The other way you can do it in JavaScript is just to name, sorry, not the other way. The better way is just to say debug message and what you would do inside this function. So basically, you want to define all of the arguments you accept. You basically never need to access this. It's just there if you do need it or if you want to see what somebody was trying to do to your function. But this is how you would usually do it, is you would say debug message, and then in your function you would create a separate variable that equals the default value if it's null. So to do that, there's an easy way to do that in JavaScript called null coalescing. Let me show you what it looks like. What this will do is if debug message is empty, it'll set it to a default value.
There's no null coalesce operator, it's just an or.
Yeah, that's why it's not really null coalescing. What this will do is it'll evaluate debug message as a Boolean. So it'll say, is debug message truthy? And this is where we can kind of use JavaScript's understanding of Boolean values, right? So like true or false, everything can be true or false in JavaScript. It has to, because otherwise the language wouldn't function the way it does. So when you evaluate debug message as a Boolean, if it's false, it'll check this one to see if it's truthy, and if it is, it'll just return that value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's another thing about functions we'll get to next, is you can actually get a value out of the function as well as pass something into a function.
Is there a way to put a return type in JavaScript, or do you just do it?
I think there's a W3C RFC out there for types in JavaScript. ECMAScript 5 was supposed to add types, but they decided not to do that. So, you know what? You ask, you're going to get an answer. It's not going to make any sense to.
Yeah, no, I just wondered.
But yes, you can in ECMAScript 5, but I don't think anyone really implemented ECMAScript 5. You might be able to find a Java program that will embed it in Java if you want, but. You got to put the debug mode. You got to set debug mode to true somehow. So this is basically any time after 8 in the loop is when debug mode is on in my code.
Yeah, no, that's but if it's broken, it just doesn't show up.
Okay.
Did you pass in?
Yeah, it's even harder.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so the reason why it's not going to show up is because that's going to call a toString function on it. And if you look on line 74, if you take arguments out of your string, take arguments out there,
Oh, so
put it on the
the
equal line,
is only going to show up.
put it in a separate console log for the arguments.
Okay, okay.
So what these backticks do is when you pass in an object, it's going to call the toString method on the object. And in JavaScript, every object's toString method, if it's not implemented, will just say object.
Oh, okay.
You can implement a toString method that returns the value in the object, but it's better just to do console log on an object by itself. I use the word method, by the way. Methods are sort of similar to functions. They're basically just functions, but they live inside another data structure that we'll cover later. Or maybe not at all. Most people don't use objects in JavaScript nowadays. Not objects, classes. They use objects all the time. Everything is an object in JavaScript. That's why there's a toString method on a string. I just spilled coffee on myself.
That's okay. It's a good look.
All right. I'm going to comment this out, but we'll move on. So I was going to do like arrow functions as well. But I looked up the differences between arrow functions and function keyword functions. I'm not gonna go over it. They're just like too heavily intertwined with classes in JavaScript. So save that for another day.
Okay. You need it if we ever do React, though, right?
Yes, that's why I was thinking about it, because you do function keyword functions, you have to call bind this on every function you create.
Yeah. That's why I was like, I didn't remember using my functions this way. And I was like, what is this function keyword?
I don't want to just like make it like, show them all the various ways to create a function and then like figure out what the way that works for you. But it's also like React does use a particular way.
I mean, you could do it this way, it's just not done.
It is time to make fizz buzz. All right. For the last part of this class, we're going to go over a program called FizzBuzz, and I'm going to introduce it by way of an odd or even function. So sometimes in JavaScript, you may want to figure out if a value can be evenly divided by a number. So to do that, you will get the remainder. So let's say we want to figure out if 7 is even. You put a percent sign there and do divided by, or sorry, 2, %2, and that will give you the remainder of the division operation on this.
If you were to divide those two.
If you divide 7 by 2, 2 can only go into 7 3 times, and you'll have 1 left over. So if we log out the remainder, it should be 1. So if I go here, we should see 1 in our console. Yep. If we divide 47 by 2, should see, I don't know what number we'll see, maybe 1. Yeah, okay. I don't know if it actually like, But the way you can tell if this is odd or even is you can say remainder is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, it's odd. If it's 0 or less, it's even.
There will be less from there. Either remainder.
You're right.
Less than 0.
If it's equal to 0, if it's equal to 0, it's even, right? So that means that 2 went into a number an even number of times. But we don't want to calculate it like I got here. We don't want to have to write down each time what the numbers we're going to check to see if they're odd or even are. So that's where functions come in very useful. I'm going to create a function called is odd or even. And we're going to say this. We're not even going to name it is odd or even. We're going to say this is an is even function. Okay. And we're going to pass in a number to check. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to get a value out of the is even function. So I'm passing in a number. I want to see if that number is even or not. So we can say remainder equals number to check modulus 2. And that's what this percent operator is called, is the modulus operator. So now if it's even, it's going to be equal to 0. So to check to see if it's even, you would say is even equals remainder equals 0. So now we have a true or false value in the is even variable that will tell us whether a number was even or not. And to get it out of the function, you're going to use the return keyword with a value passed in, right? So you'll do return is even. And what that's telling JavaScript to do is say, okay, I want you to evaluate this function, run all this code, and then give me back whatever is returned. So that return value, anytime a function runs all the way to the end, there's a return keyword placed at the end by JavaScript, and it returns undefined. Every function must return a value in JavaScript. If you run a function like this, it's mostly going to be undefined. But you can return a value from a function like this, such that if I call if I console log is even and pass in 47, it should log false.
Not a period.
Not a period. Yeah, it's got to be a semicolon. So we should get false in the console. But if I pass in 108, that's an even number. And then refresh, should say true. We can even loop over I equals 0, I less than 100, I plus plus. We can log out all the numbers between 0 and 100 and check to see if they're even or not. What did I do wrong? Oh, is even 0. No, what I meant is I. That'll produce a different result. So now you see true and false logged to the console probably about 101 times. So I think the last number, let's do this. Let's do okay. 99 is even, false. 98 is even, true, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we're going to do something more fun. I want you to create a function called FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is a word game that is played to help students with their division. So I want to create a program that'll make it so I can get all the answers and be the best at FizzBuzz at my local elementary school. Yeah, it's a dumb scenario, but I want a program that will take a number, and if it's divisible by 3 evenly, if it's evenly divisible by 3, I want you to return the string fizz. If it's evenly divisible by 5, I want you to return the word buzz. If it's evenly divisible by 15, you return fizz buzz as all one word. If it's not evenly divisible by any of those, just return the number I gave you. Okay? Once again, I want a function that takes a number. If the value passed in, you're going to check a number in this function. If the value passed in is evenly divisible by 3, return fizz, the word fizz. If it's evenly divisible by 5, return the word buzz. If it's evenly divisible by 15, return the word fizzbuzz. If it's not any of those, just return the number I gave you. I passed into the function. Okay? I'll write it up on the screen as well. For those at home. Better off doing it without the top. All right, for your edification, Dustin, I'm gonna do a little bit of
It is a keyword.
is it?
You want? Um. Okay.
Yep. And this becomes range. Can actually just do yep. Sort of. It'll pass in all the arguments that it can muster.
Right.
Yeah, so it's actually this for each function actually takes 3 arguments. It's the index, the value, and the array itself.
I'm not used to it. My for each function just takes them. Index.
I like that.
Or not index the object that you're working on.
Which is really all you need most of the time.
Yeah.
So really what we need to do is now it'll just log 0 to 100. 0 to 99. I'm gonna confuse people if I keep going on this, so I'm just gonna.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. Can get one of this internal.
Oh, it is because Unity bought out or merged with.
Source.
Yeah.
The moderator of the r/unity3 posted it and it says switch to Godot and then left the thing and then just
Yeah, basically. Godot is already like more promising development, like in terms of. I mean, obviously it didn't start where Unity is now, but
yeah, many of the developers are now contributors.
to Godot, you're kidding? That's great.
And like a lot of them are just financial contributors, but some of them now. Because they like laid off 200 people because they're like, we just don't have enough money, and then they spent $1.4 billion on Microsoft.
Yeah.
Which company has become anything now, and
Absolutely, yes. They sound like a very shady adware company.
and then the official statement from the CEO. You see that?
Oh, the Unity?
Yeah, who used to be CEO of EA.
CEO. Oh yeah, John Riccatello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said that he said that anyone who doesn't think this is a good idea, it's an idea. And that was his official like tweet, and everyone was like, "Oh, that was the last nail on the coffin."
So all those Unity books I'm downloading, video courses I'm downloading from Humble, I just should trash it. Just like ah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it still would work well. It doesn't work on my computer anymore.
Yeah, I'm not interested in doing Unity games right now. Godot seems more promising.
It's a lot of fun. I will say, it may not be the best at everything. But
It's a lot
really
more fun.
fun.
Did you fix your texturing issue or like all the models disappearing?
I think it's an extreme issue on some of the things. Some of them I was so sure about, but I mean, no, that was the stable version. I'm not sure what I'm doing in the alpha. It works. In the stable version, it doesn't. So, but I'm used to using the alpha, which changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to the. How's this book's pending? Okay.
That's good. That's a challenge.
Yeah. One, I'm going to try to answer that you but we have to do every single
So remember functions are just code, right? So how would you check something in code to see if it is something else, right? So you remember in the function we had Evo no statement.
Yeah.
So you can add as many if statements to your code as you want, and you can put a return statement in each of those if statements.
Yeah.
So right now, the remainder is only going to check for biz numbers. It's not going to check for
But like it's
the remainder fizz, remainder buzz, remainder fizz buzz. You can also check for remainders of this now, right? So this statement right here, that's almost like an if statement, right? So if you just put an if around it, you could use that, right? Oh, it worked out. Great. It's gonna break. Okay, so. So do you want to make one function or a bunch of them? We're trying to. Well, that block right there, from line 62 to 72 is its own discrete function. You can just copy that block and rename it if you want to use. So on line 67, take away the const remainder fizz and leave the number to check. Yeah, let's get rid of the equal sign. The correct design. Just leave the state over here. So. No, yeah, that's right. But what I'm saying is, you should just get rid of all, get rid of 67 and 69. And then change that is. Okay, so. And if only on here, 67. Yeah. You have a function that takes in. Yeah. Number to check. Yeah. 3. You gotta do it. Still. But I was gonna check, that's gonna get the remainder of the divide by 3. And if it's 0, so you equals 0. And close your parentheses. No parentheses. That's the term. What's gonna be the return?
I know the one thing I can receive the term it's what I'm gonna print because
Well,
it's sure.
yes, it will print because now you can basically think that like run this, you can get it out.
Yeah, and I was thinking like return means like give me something, but I was thinking about like return like whatever and this is don't show. You know, that's what I was.
That's what returning will do. Returns, so once you get to the save it, it'll stop. Function is done once it hits return. So if you return if it's there, it won't keep. But you can now do another if check, where if this is false, you can do if it is divisible by 5, I mean plus. Does that make sense?
So I can just do like this.
Yep.
Um.
You're gonna number check.
IG.
Person 5, 0. Bam, you got it. Just keep trucking until you're done. We're 800 now. So we'll get the Good. I think that's part of it. You didn't remember the change. Alright, so it's easier you to cook.
then just the this goes like if it's not visible, not show up at all.
Yeah, you would just remove this. Yeah, you would just remove this. So one thing I led you wrong on is the if statement is not going to work just as your basics. So your if statement, if it's divisible by 15, you want to check that first because 5 and 3 are put together as a product, they equal 15. So some numbers that are divisible by 3, 5, and 15, you need to check 15 first, because otherwise it's going to think, okay, so FizzBuzz takes precedence over the other numbers because 5 and 3 are products of, or 15 is a product of 5 and 3. So 5 times 3 is 15. And so if you have a number that's divisible by 15, it's divisible also by 5 and 3. So we want to start with 15 because otherwise it's going to return either fizz or buzz, but we want both. So if you did it the way I was doing it, Larissa, you would, if you ordered it differently, it would only ever return fizz or buzz. It would basically only ever return fizz because anything divisible by 15 is also divisible by 3.
And the else if is important to use if each one will run.
So you could also do value to return equals number to check, and then just set value to return equals. And just replace all your return statements with setting the value. That's not going to work, is it? No. No. I'm doing it wrong.
Not a good thing to do, but it should work in JavaScript.
No, it won't because then. Oh wait, yeah, no, it won't because it's else if.
Yeah, because else if it will return. But I wouldn't do that because you're changing types dynamically and
That's what JavaScript's all about.
I wouldn't want to do that. That's sad. It makes the code harder to read.
That's fair.
To me, maybe.
I mean, you just got a TypeScript annotation here to say this is either a string or a number.
Yes. You can.
You can't do that.
I know. And then
It would look something like this.
JavaScript people are used to that, I guess, but that makes it hard for me to read. So you can do that.
Yeah.
No, it's angry at you.
Not, I can't do it in.
Oh, it's a TypeScript thing.
Yeah, it's a type.
Oh, okay.
I gotta look and see what the types in JavaScript.
Like, that's stupid. You just don't have to do the you and you can. I would just not do that because having to have all those things written out, it's hard for me to read.
There's anywhere we can just make marginals if it's marginal,
So you have to save the return value. Right, you don't want to see FizzBuzz or FizzBuzz or FizzBuzz.
yeah,
It's
it's
not
not
the number.
the number, it's not.
You go back here. That's the other. So on me, it's it. Part of your code is to. Yeah, so if you just remove that, I'll do it.
Well, you say that, Dustin, it's gonna just print undefined
Why?
because it's a function.
Was it after return?
Yes.
JavaScript.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it will be in fine then.
Well, you can't even do that in C# or Godot, can you? Like, you can't just return void. Like, void is the keyword you're returning in C# for.
I guess
Godot.
in C# I would make sure is return the thing, this specific thing that I want.
Right, yes. But in Godot, can you just have it be void?
I don't because I enforce static typing.
That's fair,
But
okay.
you can. This is what sorry, so I agree. You can just under main thing. And it's gonna be all here. You don't have to go.
It's this little.
But set over during marriage. And then probably that. Next time, put it in the.
That was like, returning it, I was just, I think it, so it's good to hear from here. They want the actual functions, the functions.
Sure, you always must have one exact type of thing in your return. Always. Everything.
So yeah, it does, and it'll have to be that the void return type.
Yeah.
It's basically returns nothing, but JavaScript must always return something, so it will return undefined from every function that doesn't return something.
It makes sure that you always know exactly what I like. And it also means the tools can help you work more. It knows where everything needs to be.
Yeah, we won't get into TypeScript in this class, but it's a really cool feature that sort of, it's not a feature, it's a program that runs your JavaScript through an interpreter and spits out.
The Visual Studio Regular has Copilot in it now, so it's
JavaScript
like
and TypeScript.
it's like weird. Like when I'm writing C#, it's like trying to help me, but you can tell it's AI and it's not just regular intelligence because I was trying to inherit it and it was like it made up a class name that doesn't exist in my project. It was like, do you want to inherit from base customer base?
Base customer base.
Customer base, and it was just like repeated forever, and I was like, no, like that's not a thing.
Base customer base dot utils dot base customer dot customer field or whatever.
They tried to write a whole file for me, and I was like, no, this isn't what I want. This is wrong.
You want this code.
Like with a copyright, like some other company.
That really chafes my
And I
bananas.
was like, no, that's not what I want.
That really rustles some jimmies. Like they're copying code verbatim.
Yeah, because the AI is just pulling.
Yes.
It hasn't been trained well enough.
So the
yet.
question is, are they using private repositories for that as well? That's horrible.
I think when you do it on GitHub now, it tells you that
All your code is hosted on here.
all your code are belong to us.
So Just be
But
aware.
they are training it to not, like, they're saying that is like, they're not saying, like, with the disclaimer is not like, oh, we used it, oh, it may accidentally, that's not our, like.
No, it's not the intention, but they're using it, your data as the training set. That's,
Well, no, I think what they mean is even, if they're not even intending to use this data as the training set, they're trying to fix
oh, okay.
that. But right now, currently it is.
Think.
Cause I remember like Tim Sweeney was really upset because Unreal is in, you know.
Yeah.
And like you get like Unreal copyright.
That's like trade secrets. That's like, you could sue GitHub initially if you were able to like get the AI to copy it verbatim.
Yeah, it doesn't though. It just does like random parts. Like someone posted a thing where it's like a copyright from someone else, but in someone else's code, not the code, but the copyright showed up as something.
Which is like, it's just gonna feed in on itself because you're gonna have people using Copilot that then just generates the best version of a FizzBuzz algorithm, I guess.
That's your business.
You know, I didn't work.
I figured it out because I didn't realize that Josh always had to return something. So I was like,
Yes. Okay, for the last bit, I'm just gonna go over a syntax change. So this is a FizzBuzz function, right? You can do the same thing, but a little differently. So let me comment this out. Const FizzBuzz equals number to check. Rocket ship. Yeah, fat arrow. And if I run this code, it'll do the exact same thing. So this is what we'll be seeing in the web framework we'll be teaching, probably in another class or two. I'm thinking web APIs next time. I'll be here to teach that, and then React intro will be when I'm out of town. So I'll start working on exercises and stuff like that. We'll start learning about APIs. So you'll be able to fetch data from somewhere else and bring it into your application.
Is Gregory a React dev?
I don't think so.
Is he a web dev?
He is a back-end web dev. So he'll be able to support you with an API if you need it. I'll give him access.
Because the first time I was like, I can do React, but the first time is setting up a new React like project, which I only do a few times because I really struggle with it if I feel like I've done it a long time.
Right. But if you'll notice, it's very similar to this function. The only difference is we're assigning it to a constant, and the function body itself is this, right? So this is a function literal. Like, you know how when you create an object, it looks like this. Property colon my name. And that's just in JavaScript. Like, JavaScript knows about it, but since it's not referenced anywhere, it's just going to come and be like, okay, you created an object literal. I don't know what to do with that. But if you assign it to a variable, some var equals some property, and save that, you can then log it out later on in your program.
Yeah. Do that forever.
So now you can see some property, my name. There you go. Are there any questions about this syntax? I know it's like a kind of big, scary change, but it really, the parts are the same, right? So the function name ends up over here. So this FizzBuzz right here is the same as this FizzBuzz right here. This number to check is the same as this number to check. And then this just says, hey, this is a function. Here's the body of the function. And when I say body, I just mean that's the code you're gonna run.
This is the more modern way to do it. I didn't even remember you could still do it the other way.
Right.
So
So this is the way we'll be doing it in React. That's why I wanted to show you this. React will be using this almost exclusively. You'll use arrow functions quite a bit. You can use the other variety, but it's frowned upon, not best practice. So we're just going to skip it entirely. But what you can do right now is you can what's called refactor or change all your functions to use the new style. And then that'll be the final exercise for today.
I guess if I can't figure it out, I'll just show everyone Expo.
Expo.
Yeah, I see it at Expo.
Oh yeah.
because I know that pretty well.
Well, I mean, you should be able to do the clicker example, like, or the incrementer example.
Okay.
Right.
No, it's not, I know React syntax. I'm saying that the last time I tried to set up a React web app, I couldn't get it to just run.
Is React DOM still a thing?
But I know how to do a React Native app because it's helpful.
You can still use React DOM.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know how to. There's like create React app. That was the part. It was just the actual setup that it just wouldn't run once it. Yeah, that's the part that I don't struggle with this stuff once I get into React. It's the I can't make it start because it's like, oh, you're missing such and such thing, and then it's like, oh, but it's out of date.
So React, there should be. Oh. Oh, this isn't helpful.
Yeah.
Like the
They're just doing something under the covers.
So that's what I'm saying. If worst comes to worst, I can do React Mobile, which will be the same, well, almost the same. You just won't be using HTML.
Well, this is where CodePen could be helpful if you just need to get
Can you
started.
do React?
I think you can, yeah. Oh yeah, here you go. React DOM still works.
Well, yeah, but that part.
But
Well,
like
that
you
is-
need way more than that, right? You need like Webpack. You need a bunch of dependencies.
No, you don't. React is just a library.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because you can't. Okay, so
I
you're not
thought you
gonna be able
had-
to build a full web app without all the.
Okay, I thought you had to have all that stuff to do it because anytime anyone's ever told me, they're like, no, you have to have this stuff.
That's a bunch of people who went to boot camp and don't know anything.
No, that's a guy with a 16 years of experience and a full CS degree with a master's.
No, that's specifically a very specific person I'm talking about.
This was in 2017. So let's see. You can run React.js directly into your browser. Are not required. Here's a snippet.
Okay.
Yeah, you just use React DOM.render and you can still use the functional element.
Okay, and I don't need to have any of that. Okay, cool. That makes it easy. I can do that.
Yep. And that way you can just show like the incrementer example or the, like a
I
timer.
really just want to show. That's okay. I won't.
Mobile's more fun. Runs on your phone.
So does the web. Not well. I won't say it.
I wouldn't know if React Native is the web running in your phone. It's very thin JavaScript layer on your Swift and Kotlin.
Sorry, Sherika. This will be recorded so you can review it later as well. What we're doing now is we're taking the FizzBuzz function we created and moving to this new syntax. It's the same syntax, or it's not the same syntax, but the elements are the same. So if you look at the old FizzBuzz, you'll notice that the name just gets switched to a const FizzBuzz. And then you do an equal sign. And then you just take this piece with the parentheses and put it over here with a arrow function, right? So this just says you're a function. And then here's the open and close parentheses. And then inside is our code that we were just running. And then you should just be able to reload your code and it'll work just fine. In the room, how are we doing? Looks like you're done, Tara.
It's like, it's a short version. It's about, yeah.
So, okay, we're getting about
Right. Alright.
So if you look here, you guys say you got spaces. That's why JavaScript is freaking out. It's not exactly the same. So you just copy and do the check.
Man, they make a really good.
Yeah, I think everything there's just really nice.
That's true. That's why that's why the purpose state.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
And go on to practice.
Maybe it'll be part of you.
Sorry. Because the for loop, or sorry. Yeah, did that.
Green. I haven't read the breakfast book. Okay. Yeah, we have a vegan breakfast food place.
I think it's gonna be a really long time there. I get an hour.
That I will do. And then got big spots instead of this. Just go around the whole thing.
Every eating lunch tomorrow.
Yay. What are we doing?
At the.
Yes.
What is that?
I don't know, but it's. Yeah.
Out of the brewery.
Yeah.
Okay, we just want.
We're gonna hear it. She's gonna get back to that. She's on. She's in the. Just trying to build down.
Well, she never made it in the Slack channel. She continues on her own. I know it's a lot more difficult on your own.
I just want to do this. I just want to.
Oh, you mean. First, please.
Stay up. Just from my.
Oh, would be around. On your apartment.
Yes, from the second, can you tell me again what I'm not gonna get anything that changes.
Yeah, let me see if I can. So if you look on line 108, just real quick. So if you look on line 108, you see it's got the function keyword instead of the const keyword, and there's no equal sign.
So T in one you because the viewer students function. So that's what. And then this was they're still equals.
Fun fact about functions, you can pass functions to other functions. So,
So basic function. And then basic functions with error.
And we'll get to that in the next class, but you can tie functions to other functions so that when something's done, that's primarily a use case. JavaScript can only do one thing at a time. And that includes drawing UI elements. So if you want your page to stay running, or like you know how you have loading stickers in web applications sometimes, like from Facebook, it loads your posts and it's got a sticker. That can't function in JavaScript if you don't write your code with callback functions. And what callback functions are they're functions passed to other functions that then are called when something's done. So you have to kind of say, okay, do this later. And then once later comes, it will call the function. So that,
You were actually, you saw the 100% by React tool, because she was having a problem, I think, with the vanilla web development in a while. Is that a document you're trying to change stuff in HTML, like whatever?
Yep, inner HTML or whatever.
It was not, this document not loaded yet, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and it's a document on the.
I think it's document
I thought it was
dot
different.
It's ready.
on ready or on content loaded. DOM content loaded is another one.
All the lines of it is just be a null that it's running all your JavaScript, and then it's making the HTML, I guess.
It depends on where you put your JavaScript. You put it at the bottom,
Sure, to the bottom, then it would,
it runs it after it's loaded all the content.
okay.
All right. So next week we'll be covering some web APIs. So we'll talk about fetch. We'll talk about, we're going to make fetch happen. If anyone's seen Mean Girls. I haven't, but I hear it's good. We'll also talk about replacing the HTML content so you can start writing things to a web page instead of just writing them in the console. And we'll talk about some local storage options as well, so you can save data to the disk so that you don't have to fetch it every time from another API. We'll make a little guest book application, or try to, and then we'll go from there. After that week, we'll start looking at React. That's going to be, oh boy, buckle in for React. That'll be the 29th, I think. Yeah, so Dustin will be teaching on the 30th. I will be teaching on the 23rd, and we will see how far we can get. I'm still talking with some folks at the Drake House about an application we can build for them as a team. So we'll use Gregory's skills as a back-end engineer to get a back-end together. And I'll work with him as well to get that together. And then y'all can develop the front end. So that's our class for today. We'll talk to you next week. Please, if you have any questions about this week's class, please just at some in the chat, at here or at channel. If you have Slack open. Right, yeah. Let me move this to the other screen so y'all can see it. Oh dear. Oh goodness, it's so slow. So slow. All right. So if you're in Slack and you want to get somebody's attention, go to the Learning How to Code channel and type at channel. And you'll see how it's highlighted like that. That's how you know you're going to get everybody in the channel. You're going to put all of them on blast. So if you see somebody say at channel, hey, I need help with this. If you're a student or a teacher, just jump in and help if you have the knowledge, because that's how we get better, is we share knowledge with each other. So Dustin, Gregory, and myself will be on there, and you can, if you want, you can mute notifications if it gets too chatty, but we will. Yeah, Dustin will do that immediately. No, we'll be listening for questions, and I'll be at Christ Fellowship Church tomorrow if anyone's interested. 10 a.m. at Roswell North Elementary off of Woodstock Road. Caroline, myself, and Raven will be there. So if you want to meet up, there's refreshments, Bible classes for kids, nursery for those that need it, and etc. Anyway, hope you all have a great rest of your Saturday.